workshop, Moving Forward on Fragility and Resilience. I will invite each member of the panel forward one by one to take their seat, starting with the European Commissioner for Equality, Preparedness and Crisis Management, Madam Hadja Lahbib. There she is. Welcome, Madam Lahbib. I think you are in the middle, madam. Is it the middle? This one is the middle. I think this looks good, yes? Thank you. Our next speaker is the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mr. Thomas Fletcher. Thank you for joining us, sir. It's your chance to sit next to the Commissioner, so I would take it. Next on my list is UNDP Administrator Mr. Achim Steiner. Thank you, sir, and welcome to Brussels. Then last but not least, I'd like to give the floor to the State Secretary for Development Policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, Elsbeth Sondergaard. This panel will be moderated by the Director General at DG ECHO, Mr. Maciej Popowski. I invite him to the floor and leave you in his capable hands. Mr. Popowski and I agreed that if he takes my job as a moderator for an hour, I take his job as a Director General for an hour. Enjoy the panel, sir. Give them one more round of applause.
Right. Good morning. Welcome to the first panel. That will focus indeed on fragility and resilience. Not a new subject, but an important one that we need to revisit time and again. It's not only a challenge, it's a fact of life. We know that by 2040, nearly 92% of the world's poorest will live in fragile context. So that adds to the complexity of the crisis around the world. And the resilience is a counterbalance to fragility. We need to invest in it to prevent further crisis and, of course, to bring relief to the people in need. So that would be the focus on our discussion. I'm not going to introduce that because we have a great panel to drill in deeper into the subject matter. The panelists were actually introduced, so I don't need to redo it. Because time is short, I will start off with a first round of questions to our panelists, and I first turn to Tom Fletcher, as you are the closest to the affected people and communities, traveling the world, following UNX. So we've been recently to the occupied territories, Syria, Sudan, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Myanmar. What do have those contexts in common, and where do you see correlation between fragility and humanitarian needs?
Well, thank you so much, Maciej, and thank you, colleagues, for joining us, and thank you, Commissioner, for bringing us together in Brussels for this moment, vital moment for the humanitarian movement and for your humanitarian leadership. And I think you set out for us there that compelling sense of humanitarian action as being about the head, hand and heart. You know, there's a strong case for doing this, but we've got to do it better and more effectively, more skillfully. But also it's a human mission as well, and it's about individuals. So yeah, as you say, my passport has all the visa stamps in it that will normally get you banned from certain countries, and it's 6 months in the job as of today, from Darfur, Damascus, Aleppo and Homs to Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, into Gaza, into Mandalay just after that terrible earthquake, and then just a couple of weeks ago into Kandahar, Kunduz, Kabul. And I think what these crises have in common, several things really. One, this sense of the human impact of an age of impunity. And the Commissioner spoke about the need for us to stand up for international law. Absolutely right, because you see that very direct impact on individuals, of this sense that these crises are more ferocious, they last longer, and there is more of a sense that the rules are somehow fraying at the edges, that suddenly it's okay to target humanitarian workers, that in some cases, some politicians and leaders are even boasting about the fact that they are doing humanitarian damage, that they're using starvation as a weapon of war. And so we face this terrible joining up of those crises because it's getting harder and harder to end those conflicts. We seem to be getting worse at ending wars, ending crises, and so that level of needs is being driven up and up. And for me, that's driven home a conversation in Aleppo with Abdullah, who'd been into Saidadna prison the day before to look for his 14 relatives, and all he had to show for them was a noose. And he said, I'm holding on to this noose because it's the only physical connection I have to my family who were taken out and I'll never see again. I think the second big link between all of these crises is the way in which the funding cuts are now biting. And I really saw that close up in Kunduz a couple of weeks ago, where I sat with mothers who'd lost their children because they'd had to cycle 3 hours to give birth at the nearest medical center because the one closer to them had been shut the week before. That was happening in real time as I was there. And there's nothing you can say to people who describe that situation to you. But these cuts are biting hard right now. People are dying already because of the cuts. And I recognize that in some cases, the cuts are due to necessity. They're because of economic factors closer to home. They're because we haven't always won that argument with our populations that we must get out there and win now the case for humanitarian solidarity. But in some cases, the cuts are because of ideology. And those are the ones that really make me most angry on behalf of the people we serve. When I hear some of the richest people in the world boasting about cutting aid to the most vulnerable people in the world. And thirdly and finally, another clear connection between these crises, quietly in the background, is the way that the climate crisis will drive needs in the future. Again, in Afghanistan, you get that sense of those drought conditions spreading and hitting the areas that are already affected by existing inequality and crisis. You see it, of course, in Darfur and across the border in Chad, where as you fly over, you can see directly beneath you the floodplains and the way in which climate is linking up with poverty and crisis to displace even more people. And we have to, as we heard earlier on, use anticipatory action and prepare ourselves for the climate shocks ahead. Because every degree of temperature rise will drive another 1 billion people out of the areas in which we've lived for millennia. If I'm allowed one more, I'll just say that the other thing that links these crises is that you do see the worst of inhumanity in every place you go to that's been so affected by conflict and crisis. But you also see the best of humanity. And it's not ultimately us who are on the front lines of the response. It's those local communities that are the first responders to crisis. And as we think about reform of the humanitarian movement and the humanitarian reset, we must put their needs at the center, at the heart of everything we do.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Tom. Let me turn to Commissioner Habib. You've been traveling a bit as well from the beginning, from the start of your mandate. So what kind of lessons you've drawn from your mission and engagement with stakeholders, and how does fragility influence the ability of humanitarian actors to operate?
Yeah, thank you. I've been traveling not as much as you, Tom, and I'm in the job since 5 months, so you have 1 month ahead of me. But to complete the picture you draw, I would like to say first that the first lesson or the first discovery was the incredible commitment of humanitarian aid workers on the ground. You're right by saying that they are really working with their heart and their brain as well, of course, but they really want to alleviate suffering, to save lives. And humanitarian aid is about saving lives, indeed. And at the same time, as we start by Syria and by Jordan, Zaatari camp, and so on, situation where the